to. Thank you. I will say I'm very honored to introduce Roger, our speaker. I was going through his bio and thought this is absolutely amazing, so thank you. Roger Schelper is the co-founder of Davanni's, serving locally legendary pizza and hoagies since 1975. He spent over 35 years growing and developing the business into a multi-unit and multi-brand enterprise with more than 1,000 employees. Roger graduated from the University of Minnesota in 1971 with, get this, a BA in History and Economics and a Bachelor of Science in Business and Administration, and then went back and did MBA coursework at the Carlson School of Management. And as soon as he was done with that, he immediately jumped into business, being part of the startup for Nutrition World Health. But while he was at the university, specifically in his early 20s, he was at a basketball practice at the University of Minnesota Gophers, and he collapsed. He was diagnosed with a rare and life-threatening blood disease called aplastic anemia and was told he had less than 6 months to live. But folks, that was nearly 50 years ago. Roger is fueled by a determination to live every day like it counts, make authentic personal connections, and serve as a role model and leader. In addition to overcoming illness, building a successful business, and achieving numerous athletic accomplishments, Roger is also an active member of his community. He has been the president of the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, president of Psi Upsilon Alumni Association, chairman of Mr. Basketball Committee, Carlson Business School board member, and a youth group leader at his church. Roger is also a MAC Award winner from the ABC Foundation, a Spurgeon Award winner from the Boy Scouts, a Bern Bunzella Award winner from the Business Economics Education Foundation, a 65 Roses Award winner from the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, and the 2005 inductee into the Edina Athletic Hall of Fame. For Roger counts his biggest and best accomplishments as being a dad, being a foster dad, being a stepdad, and most recently, being a granddad. Please welcome Roger Schelper to the finest podium in Minneapolis.
Can you hear me without the mic?
No.
Can you hear me with the mic? Good. It's nice that we have the famous wide receiver from the Pittsburgh Steelers, Lynn Swann. I think that's pretty amazing. Thank you for inviting me. And I'd like to say a special greeting to my friends that I've met here, but also my old friends like Chris Mayer and others, and my friend Garfield. Where did he go? He's somewhere there. Anyway, for helping me the last time I was here, January 19th, and I cracked a tibia before I got here, and I've been on crutches until the last couple of weeks. So, anyway, what I want to say is the poem that you read, or the piece about if there wasn't winter, you wouldn't have a spring. If you didn't have adversity, you wouldn't have joy or other things. So, I was born on Mother's Day. Needless to say, that was quite a thrill for my mom at St. Rita's Hospital in Lima, Ohio. I was baptized the same day at St. Rita's by the Catholic people there, even though we were Lutheran, because I was a born a blue baby and they didn't think I was going to live to see the next day. So they wanted to make sure I was baptized before anything worse happened. I lived, survived. I have 3 brothers. We were living in a small town in Illinois. In 1957, we woke up one morning in the fall, and my mom and dad were gone. And there was a strange lady there, and we said, well, where are they? And they were in Iowa City. Your father was hurt badly in a car accident last night. He was hit head-on by a drunk and crushed from behind by a semi. In the days before the interstate, 2-lane roads, fortunately he had a 53 Buick, which was built like a tank, and they cut him out with torches, sent him to Iowa City, which was the closest hospital, and where he resided in a coma for 6 weeks. And we didn't see him until about 2 weeks before Christmas. And I remember, and I've written about it in the Davanni's paper that I used to write, about how that was the best Christmas ever. Not whatever gifts you might gotten or whatever, but to have your father there at Christmas. I say that because I watched my dad come from paralysis. He was a tremendous athlete in Indiana, Tennis Hall of Fame. He used to play for the Zollner Pistons in the City League before they became the Fort Wayne Pistons, and then became the Detroit Pistons, obviously. But he was a great athlete, as was my mother, and but he had to learn everything. And he couldn't play tennis anymore after the accident, but he did learn how to play golf, and he actually got down to the low 80s. He was a man with tremendous fortitude. And I got lucky. When I was in Illinois, I always wanted to be on the state championship team because basketball in Illinois is huge. I mean, I started playing when I was 5, and I played every single day. Same thing up here. Fortunately, I was a member of the Edina undefeated state championship in football and in basketball my senior year, and we ended up second in track. I almost had a trifecta going that year. I ended up playing basketball and track at the University of Minnesota. So I was like, I think if people look from the outside, they'd say, this guy's been blessed. He's you know, a good athlete, and success has come his way and everything like that. Well, in 1970, I was sent, as my daughter said in the bio, I started blacking out. I couldn't finish practices. I was really ill all the time. I went into the health service. They started taking blood. They started doing bone marrow samples and that. They said, you have aplastic anemia. I said, what is that? He said, it's pretty rare. Your body is unable to make, your bone marrow is unable to make enough cells. At the time, I had gone from 17 hemoglobin as an athlete to 5.9. Typical white count is 10,000. I was at about 900. Typical platelets, 200 to 300,000. I was at 8,000, which is hemophilic stage. If you know what hemophilia is, you get a bruise and you basically bleed, bleed, bleed. I remember that night, I went through the 5 stages of, you know, disbelief, anger, whatever all those things are, and I kind of cleared it up in one day, and I woke up the next day and said, I'm not going to die. And probably because I'm really stubborn, which is why I'm an entrepreneur. I didn't like taking instructions from people. It was, I thank God the coaches could put up with me because I always wanted to run my own plays, do different things. But so that could be a strength and a weakness. In my case, I think being a stubborn, never give it up kind of a guy really helped. So for 12 years, I lived on transfusions every 6 weeks. And I started experimenting with faith healing, multivitamin, megavitamin therapy, yoga, transcendental meditation, focus imaging, exercise therapy, anything that I could think of. I would throw everything at the wall, think something is going to work. I'm not going to die. Something is going to kick in. So, early 80s, I'm diagnosed. I come down with pneumonia. Pneumonia, for most people, is very difficult. Obviously, as you're older, pneumonia can be fatal. Well, for aplastics, pneumonia was pretty much not a very good thing. And I was in the hospital for, I don't know, 7 or 8 days, high fever, sweating 6 or 7 beddings through the night, etc., praying because I had a new daughter that everything would be okay. I remember sitting in the point at the University Hospital when my wife and my baby daughter, Veronica, showed up, and her little face was peeking out the window, and I thought, thank God, I think I'm going to be able to see my daughter all the way through. The next year, 2 years later, we had Max, my son, and a couple of years after that, something happened in our family. There was a little girl who was living with her paranoid schizophrenic mother in northeast Minneapolis in a little cracker box house. She was going to a Catholic school up there. She came home from school one day. The door was locked. There was a bag of clothes on the stoop. Chrissy was the youngest cousin of my wife, Betty, at the time, and the youngest of 4 kids. The father had disappeared as he's a truck driver, and he smoked a lot of pot, and he had disappeared when she was about 1 1/2. As I said, the mother was a very smart and attractive woman, and worked for the Minneapolis Gas Company, but paranoid schizophrenia, and she would not take meds, so she was basically unable to work. And I said, and Chrissy was bounced around to foster homes, temporaries. And And I said to Betty, I said, we can't let a family member be bounced around. The government can't do very many things right, if anything right, let alone raise children. They don't know how to do that. He said, we have a family, we have a home, we have enough money, you're a stay-at-home mom, we could take care of Chrissy, she was 12 years old, and Betty was doubting, didn't know if we could do it. She goes to church at St. Stephen's the next 2 days later, and she hears the story of the
Moses?
oh, the guys that help people, whatever.
Good Samaritan.
Good Samaritan.
Good Samaritan, thank you. Good Samaritan who's afraid of the, thank you. Brain dead. The Good Samaritan who runs into the leper on a road and decides that I will get off my horse or whatever, and I will have the courage to face the leper, my biggest fear. I will face my biggest fear. And she came back, she said, I'm not afraid anymore, let's take Chrissy in. So we did, and fortunately my kids were young enough, they accepted Chrissy pretty quickly, which was kind of a good thing, because through the years we took in other kids, and I think my kids were better for it. A lot of people say, well, I don't want to introduce a problem child to my kids, my precious little ones. Well, precious little ones don't need to be helicoptered and overnourished like we do these days. They need to stumble and hurt themselves once in a while and experience different things. So I remember Chrissy, I mean, she was such a rebel that, I mean, she used to wear garbage bags to Edina High School. She would take the outdoor bags, cut holes in the sleeves and the neck, and put a belt around it. She'd dye her hair purple because she wanted to be different. Well, Chrissy, you're succeeding in that. So don't ever complain to us when things aren't, you know, when you're not exactly brought into every single group. But thank God St. Stephen's was there. The youth group that I had worked for and was working for, and the youth minister helped us out. There was one night, and I'm only going to give you a few things, but there was loud music coming in. Max's room was across the hall. We were on the second floor. She was in the basement. Now, it was a nice basement. It wasn't, you know, like cobwebs and you know, that kind of stuff. It was totally finished with a bathroom and a nice bedroom and the whole thing. So the music was coming up through the vents. I went down and I said, Max is crying, and he's crying because it's 1 in the morning and you're playing music loud. Come on. And I said, I'm smelling cigarette smoke. You've been smoking here. You're supposed to, if you're going to smoke outside on the patio. You're not supposed to smoke in the house. F you, F you, F you, F you, in my face. And I literally, I mean, I have spanked my kids in the past a couple times, and I wanted to spank her or something else, but I couldn't because she was a foster kid, and you have to follow different rules. At any rate, so eventually we got her off the foster program because they had her coming in visiting with her mother all the time, and it was like too much stress for her. So we just said, we don't need the money, we'll just take her, whatever. Eventually Chrissy got out of Edina. She had 2 years at Metro, a physics major, or an AA in physics, was actually teaching kids physics. Then she ran away. She lived at my brother's place on Park Avenue for a while, a duplex, and ran away, and literally I haven't seen her in 20-some years. Which is very sad, because I know that she's gone paranoid schizophrenic, she's not taking her meds, and she's probably homeless somewhere and I don't know where, and I can't really do anything about it. Sometimes you just have to let go. The next was ABC program. If you're not familiar with it, A Better Chance. It brings kids in from inner cities in around the country, Cleveland, Cincinnati, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Detroit, whatever. And they're students of high ability and high motivation. And typically they're black. Often we have some Hispanics and Asian kids and stuff like that. I'm not sure if we ever have any Caucasian kids. Maybe we do. It's been a number of years since I've been there. But so Felicia is a black girl from Hamilton, Ohio. And she lived in the ABC house, but on weekends she was with us, in the summer she was with us. So we were her host family. She had a sperm donor for her father. Well, I don't want to use the word father. When kids are conceived, and the male part of the version takes off and doesn't do anything, they don't earn the term father from me. They are sperm donors. That's all they are. Punch and run, and they run, and these kids are left with no father. Fortunately for Felicia, she had a grandmother and a grandfather that were very good to her and helped her out a lot. So she had good religious founding. She was a brilliant student. She comes to Edina as a sophomore, a black gal from out of state, and by the junior year she's a class president. This shows you the kind of quality person that she was. After her sophomore year, we found out that her two best friends in Hamilton, one was pregnant, the other was killed in a drive-by. So the fact that Felicia got out of that environment, which was a very dangerous environment, and got to the Edina ABC program was a blessing, and she continues to be a blessing. She's we went to her church a couple times here in town, and literally 2.5 hours in a Baptist church. It's rocking and rolling. It's great, but it's a long service. But she is really quite an amazing gal, and she's going off to her law degree now. The next guy is a friend of Gleason, how I've met Gleason, actually. Brandon Macon. His family moved here from Chicago. His father was an entrepreneur in Chicago. His mother was one of 9 kids. Catholic school upbringing in Chicago. She had a 2-year degree, but she was not motivated, and I think she had issues with drinking and other things like that. She was a decent, good mom to the degree that she was able. Brandon also had a sperm donor for a father and didn't know his real father. He does have a stepdad, Rudy, who's a wonderful man. Unfortunately, though, Rudy is, he's about at a maturity level of a 14 or 15-year-old, so he was not equipped to be a real solid father for Brandon, although Brandon treats him with ultimate respect, which I really hold it to Brandon that he does that. And I like Rudy, but Rudy's hardly held a job for years. So Brandon is living at 35th in Chicago in a downstairs apartment, has never slept on a bed. A friend of Gleason's named John Montague was a Wayzata kid, and he was volunteering at the Davanni Center, the old 42nd in Bryant Junior High in Minneapolis. And he taught Brandon at about age 6 how to play chess, and within 2 or 3 weeks he was beating everybody there in chess. The kid is a genius, okay? But I don't want to tell him that too often because his head can right, please. Tends to blow up a little bit. But at any rate, he's a very ambitious kid. He has a brother who's lived on Social Security disability, even though he's never been disabled, but he's gamed the system, and his older brother Philip has never worked. And that's sad. And Brandon said, I don't want to be on welfare, and I don't want to be like my brother, and I'm going to do something. So he was being bused to Edison, getting top grades without even having to study, and then goes to Southdale to work at Arby's, and John's best friend's soon-to-be wife, Krista, my marketing gal at Davanni's, said, we need to find a job for this kid at Davanni's. So we got him a job at Edina Davanni's. He rode his bike from 35th in Chicago there, and we eventually took him in, and he lived with us and went to school at Edina, graduated, and graduated from the U in 3 years, walked onto the football team, made the team, played semi-pro football for a while in Germany, married a German girl from Hagen, Germany, and they're now expecting the second kid in about a week and a half, 2 weeks, something like that. Brandon was a very competitive guy, and we had a basket at our house, obviously. And so he wanted to play horse all the time, or one-on-one, whatever I would do. I'd come home from work, and I'd be in my work clothes, and I'd throw on some basketball shoes, and I'd kick his butt in horse or whatever, and he just wouldn't give up or anything. But one time he beat me, and he was just so thrilled that he couldn't stand it. But he asked me one time, I said, Brandon, what do you want to be when you grow up? He said, I want to be like you, Dad. I said, well, here's what you got to do, Brandon. First of all, you're a smart kid, so you got to apply yourself. Look people in the eye. Introduce yourself. Shake hands. Create a conversation. Slow down your speech. Speak the King's English. If you want to speak jive to your friends, that's fine. But when you're in a business or school setting, speak the King's English, slow down, enunciate, etc. he took everything to heart. He was like a sponge. We'd drive around and he'd say, what do you think that house is worth? What do you think that building's worth? Because I did the real estate for Davanni's and I'd been in real estate for a long time. And we just talk and talk and talk and talk. Well, today Brandon is running an Airbnb, and he's living in Scottsdale, and he's running an Airbnb business out there, and he's doing quite well. He's a dynamic kid that needs, he's like a wild horse that needs reins, am I right, Gleason?
Yep.
He's a great
Yeehaw.
kid. I'll go quickly now. My kids, I think they've turned out great, but I think everybody thinks their kids turn out great pretty much. I remarried, Betty and I divorced, and I remarried a gal who had 2 kids. Again, father they knew was there for about 5 years and he disappeared. He was an alcoholic and a pot smoker and lived in Brainerd. Emily was a straight shooter. She's now a teacher, is married, gonna have a child. She lives over in Lake Nokomis. Basically, Emily just needed somebody, a male, because her father was not there, a male to be a dad and to bounce things off of, and to pay for like college and wedding and cars and those kind of things. So, and I gladly did it because, you know, I had the money. And also, it's like, you can't take it with you, no matter how successful you are, how much money you make or whatever. What you're measured on, I believe, in life is what you leave behind with your kids, your employees, your friends, anybody that you've had contact with. If you can touch people, and I think Brandon is a good example. You heard the thing about there's a pond and it's still, and you throw the stone in and the ripples come off in concentric circles. Well, I think Brandon is a stone that we threw into the pond, and he is rippling out and affecting other people. And others are doing this too. And in fact, my stepson, Adam. Adam was 17 years old. He was just finishing high school, and he had earned a scholarship because he was very smart, but he basically smoked pot all day and, you know, didn't go to class and all that thing, but he's a genius like Brandon. He's about 6'4". When I first saw him, he said, Sandy said, well, he's supposed to show up to get the scholarship tomorrow and enroll at Brainerd Community College, but he's not going to do it. I said, bull crap. We're going to go find him. So we went to the house where he was living, and he was stoned, and he was filthy, and he had on flip-flops. His hair, he was like Jim Morrison from The Doors, you know, long hair and, you know, crummy clothes. And I said, Brandon, excuse me.
Adam.
I said, you've come to crossroads, Adam. You can go 2 ways. You can go the way of your father, continue doing drugs and screwing around, and end up being lonely and a waste of skin. Or you can go this route, and you can go to treatment tomorrow. We'll take you to treatment, and you can get your scholarship, and you go to Brainerd and turn your life around. 10 years later, after 3 attempts at treatment, after dealing with heroin addiction, etc., Adam lived with me even when his mom and I were apart and divorced. Up until the time when I came home from the city one night and his car and my car were in the ditch by my cabin. And I went in and the lights were on, the dogs were running rampant, the refrigerator door was open. And I said, Adam, what the heck's going on here? And he, I took some sleeping medicine. I said, BS, you've been shooting up. And so he put him into treatment a final time. He made it. He is now a minister. He's engaged to be married. He is running a place called The Fortress in Wilmer, which is for recovering drug people, drug users. And he's on the right path, and he is a success. So sometimes you have situations like Chrissy where you never see him again and you hope for the best. Sometimes you have situations like Felicia and Brandon and Emily and Adam, and they did work out. And I'm going to close with another thing that you probably all heard before. And my talk today is about the fact that I had a life that on the outside people would say, oh my God, this guy's had tremendous success. You know, he's popular, he's a good athlete, a good student, yada, yada, yada. But they don't know all the other stuff about facing either death or facing the loss of your father or whatever, because everybody has got a hurdle to climb somewhere along the way. And you gotta face it without fear, and you gotta understand that if you don't give up, you probably will make it. And I'm gonna give you 2 of them. And this is the one that I talk when I talk to the Aplastic Anemia Foundation. There are 2 frogs. They fall into a big bowl of milk, and they start swimming. They can't get out. Eventually one frog gets so tired, he says, I'm quitting, I can't do it. And he slips in and drowns. The other one keeps swimming, swimming, swimming. Pretty soon it turns to sour cream. Pretty soon it turns to butter, and the frog climbs out. And when I tell the aplastic anemia kids, when I talk to them, never give up. Somewhere along the line, a new medical procedure is going to come, and things will be better for all of you. The last one is, at Rotary and many other places, we serve the community and we serve big groups, etc. My brother and I are involved in a place called Hospitality House in North Minneapolis for inner city kids. One quick story, there's a little kid, I was in the bathroom, I'd just done a basketball clinic for those kids, and this kid was about 7 years old, and he walked out, and I said, what's your name? Andre. Andre, you're gonna slip on your, or trip on your shoestring, so let's, why don't you tie him? He looks at me and he goes, I don't know how to tie him. So I sat down, taught him how to tie his shoes. Little thing, just a little thing. Every time I see that kid, he smiles at me and he points at his shoes because he can tie his shoes now. You don't have to build a bridge to, Cincinnati or anything. You just have to help somebody tie a shoe. So a guy's walking down the beach with a friend, and it's low tide, and he's picking up starfish, and he's throwing them in the ocean. The guy goes, what are you doing? You can't possibly save all these starfish. He says, but I made a difference to this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Take some questions?
Absolutely, sorry.
Do you have questions for Roger? Boy, everybody's quiet.
A wide receiver wants to talk.
So what
Thank you, Lynn.
did you actually start Davanni's, or did you
Yes.
find some other?
No.
And what prompted you
Well,
to make that business?
Because from the time I was little, my dad was with Pillsbury, and we were constantly getting transferred all over the Midwest. I wanted to have stability. Again, like I said, I don't take instructions well. I wanted to be my own boss from the time I was 10. I started paper outs, lawn mowing services, shoveling services, caddying, babysitting. I did all kinds of things, started money when I was a kid. So I never wanted, at some point in time, I wanted to be my own boss. The Nutrition World situation was actually funded by some friends of mine, 2 of my mentors, my great mentors, Bob Rusin and Win Binger. Both are deceased now. But I learned how to build a business from them, and then Bob Carlson and Mick Stenson and Pat Woodring and I went into, and we opened Pontillo's in 1975 to 83. We changed the name to Davanni's in 83. A lot of people get confused and think, the Davanni's company came in and bought out the Pontillo's guys. No, we just did a name change. So, and I was the guy that was there every day working 80, 90 hours a week. The other guys were investors in the early days, so.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Roger, talk about what you did for your employees at Davanni's, because they're wonderful things, how you keep employees in.
Thank you, Chris Mayer from the University of Minnesota. One of my old buddies.
I'm not a plant.
No, he's not. No, he's actually quite an amazing guy. And I tell you what, Chris sends me birthday cards and congratulatory all the time. I mean, the power of something that comes in the mail with your name on it as a card is really powerful, and this guy knows how to do it. He's good. So, employees at Davanni's, we probably have the longest tenure of managers of any restaurant company in the country because we treat them well, their 401k, salary, we let them run the restaurants as if it was their own. I mean, they have guidelines, but basically we're not looking down their necks all the time. We cut them in on super retirement packages, scholarships to kids of employees that are good students that need money. I mean, it's just, you know what, business is common sense. You go out to a restaurant, you introduce yourself, you see the managers, you talk to the kids. We were one of the first companies to hire mentally disabled kids, and we had a ton of Down syndrome kids starting in 1979, and we still have them today. I believe they still have them. I've been retired for a couple of years, but you go in there and you see a Down syndrome kid, and you say hello. They come up and give you. I walked into Davanni's the other day that I hadn't been there for years, and the little girl recognized, well, not little anymore, but the young lady recognized me. She came up and she gave me a hug. Oh, Roger, I miss you. It's personal touch. If you want to be good in business, I don't care if you're, cutting lumber somewhere in the North Woods, or you're in a high-tech business, or whatever. If you treat your employees face to face as human beings and expect the best of them, they'll give you the best. I don't know if that's what you're referring to, Chris, but that's kind of the philosophy.
And then I just wanted to add that Hal Terse and Roger were frat boys together at the U. They're both Sayus.
Don't hold that against me. I thank you so much. You're a wonderful audience, and I'm sure this group does tremendous work. And keep it up, because if you keep throwing those starfish in, good things will happen.